Alright, welcome to this Claudia showcase. Now I do want to preface that this is a test client, so things could change. But for today's video, I'm going to be showcasing her skills, her matrices, and what I believe are going to be her best teams. I'm also going to be showcasing what she can do in a fight. Alright, so starting out, let's take a look at the abilities. So she has an A for a shatter and an S for a charge, meaning that as she attacks, she's going to be able to build up that charge rate to get those discharge skills, which is good because you need that discharge skill so that way you can activate Grievous. So let's go ahead and talk about Grievous. Grievous applies once you have a discharge ready to go. So if you notice down here, I have a discharge ready to go, so the next time I attack an opponent, they're going to be afflicted by Grievous, allowing me to do 20% extra damage for 7 seconds. On top of that, like our previous limited banner characters, she has an elemental resonance, and she gives us a physical resonance, which increases our physical attack by 15% and our physical resistance by 25%, as long as we have 2 or more physical characters in the party. So let's start out with their C1 skill. What it does is after hitting a target with the skill or discharge skill, it grants 1 stack of the following buff. Increases damage dealt by 8% for 25 seconds, stacking up to 3 times for a maximum of 1 stack per skill use. Meaning, this is how I see this going. You activate her skill, then you switch to a different character, use their discharge skill, then you switch back to her, use her discharge skill, then you use her skill again, and you have the maximum buff. For her C2, it just increases the attack growth, so basically more damage. For her C3, when you hit a target with the skill or discharge skill, it applies 1 stack of war runes to the target. And what that does, it increases incoming physical damage and shatter from physical weapons by 10% for 15 seconds. And that can stack up to 1 time. Then we have C4, which it increases the weapon's HP growth. It's not that great, but I guess it's something. Then we have C5. So hitting targets with skill or discharge skill grants a skill damage boost, which increases all weapon skill damage by 20% for 25 seconds. So this is another way how she just increases your overall team's damage. Now all their skills are now buffed. And combining this with her matrices, it gets a little crazy. Now for her C6, so skills hitting the same target no longer have reduced damage. After using her skill or discharge skill, all targets with war wounds within 8 meters gain another stack of war wounds. So this skill does not only just buff your C3 ability, but it also increases the damage you're going to do to single targets. So let's go ahead and start out with her skills. So for her first skill is Quick Slash. This is basically her normal attack string. She does 5 hits. Next we have Jumping Strike. So while she's airborne, she can use 4 normal attacks. Then we have Cyclone. After she does a normal attack, if you hold down the normal button, she'll perform the Cyclone. Then we have Driving Edge. So if you hold the attack button while in the air, you'll just come spinning down. Then we have the Sneak Attack. If you approach an enemy from behind while crouching and you use the attack button, you'll perform like a backstab. Then we have the Dodge skill, to where you tap the normal once you dodge and it just knocks people up in the air. Then for her skill, she basically makes a giant star which does multiple attacks, but each attack does 20% less damage unless you have her C6, where her skills no longer get reduced damage. Then finally we have her discharge skill, where it removes all debuffs, it does a lot of multi-slashes, and you're immune to all effects. So let's take a look at Claudia's matrices. Now I think her matrices are actually really good. The 2-piece set, you essentially do more damage as long as you're attacking in the air, which is pretty easy just to jump in the air and do your skill, and it's going to hit 5 times, so that's going to do quite a bit of damage. But her 4-piece is where it really gets interesting. Once you hit someone with her skill, you get a 3-second cooldown. On top of that, all the discharge skills get a 126% damage increase for 15 seconds. That's enough time to switch to someone, do the discharge skill, then switch back to Claudia and do her discharge skill and do massive damage. Other pieces to consider is Samir's 2-piece, to where you get a stacking damage increase the more times you hit an opponent, and 2-piece Crow, to where you increase your crit damage if the target is under 60% health. On top of that, you may want to consider even using 4-piece Crow, because if you have a lot of crit rate, you can get this 4-piece set to where crits deal additional damage over time. These are the matrices sets that I think will be good on Claudia. But if you do want to do a quick swap team in the future, you might want to get Claudia's matrices. Now let's talk about Claudia's teams. Now I think her best teams are going to involve using Shiro. The reason being is Shiro is the only SSR that has the physical element, and with Claudia having physical resonance, they're going to probably work hand in hand. On top of that, if you look at Shiro and you get to like her 3-star, once she she shatters a shield, she can reset cooldown. So you can basically just be switching back and forth between Claudia and Shiro, getting those cooldowns reset and doing a lot of damage. On top of that, you're going to get the Grievous effects to where you're not only going to be doing more damage for your team, but also your teammates. This is the reason why I think one of the best teams that's going to be really good with her is probably having the Nemesis combo, because if you use Shiro and Claudia and Nemesis, you're basically healing up your teammates, you're keeping that Grievous on, and you're doing a lot of damage. But let's look at a couple other teams that I think will work with Claudia. Now let's say you're doing the Bygone Phantasm, and as you climb up higher floors, one of the things you don't really necessarily need is healing, but you need more damage. And one of the things that can prevent you from doing a lot of damage is those shields. So you might want another shield breaker on the team to easily deal with those shields. So you can replace Nemesis for either Meryl, King, or Huma. But for your support team, top tier is just going to be Nemesis, because she does bring a lot of damage and she does give those heals, and she can also slow. But you do have alternatives. You can just straight use Coco to be best healer in the game. She's also going to give people a damage boost, or you can do Zero, which just basically gives people lots of shields, makes them invulnerable. This can really come in handy depending on the content. And another team I wanted to talk about, let's just call it the damage dealing team. Let's say you believe that Claudia and Shiro do enough shatter, so then we can just use Tsubasa to help buff us up even more so we do more damage. Now I want to talk about some other teams, and that's where you use the C1 Claudia. So once you hit someone with a skill, you get a buff for 25 seconds, so she kind of becomes a Tsubasa type of character. And the teams you can create around that is this. So one team that you can use with C1 Claudia is Frigg and Tsubasa. Frigg is going to give that elemental resonance for the ice team, so Tsubasa and Frigg are going to get powered up. Claudia, of course, is going to power them up with her C1, and Tsubasa already powers them up just using her dodge skills. Now the only problem that I see with this team is that Claudia's shatter is A and Frigg's shatter is A, so it may not be enough to break those shields consistently, but you just have to kind of test it out and see. But then our other team is that we could use Samir, Nemesis, and Claudia, to where Claudia, of course, is buffing up the rest of the party. We're getting the Volt Resonance with Nemesis. Samir just does a lot of damage, but we don't have that much of a shatterer because Claudia is just an A. But I do want to point out that Claudia has an S tier charge, Samir has an S tier charge, and Nemesis has an S tier charge. So you're going to be using your discharge skills quite a bit, and that might be enough to break those shields compared to the other teams. Now let's say this is your first limited banner and you don't want to use Shiro for some reason. You could consider doing the rainbow team, to where you replace Nemesis with King, Meryl, or Huma. I think this team would be decent. As we see, they're pushing the elemental resonance, so I feel like this team is going to really taper off in the future. But if that's all you have, that's all you have. Now let's showcase what Claudia can do. I do want to mention that because this is a test client, my crit is pretty low, but I do have a 6-star Claudia, and also I have 3-star Matrices. So if you're probably only rolling for Claudia and only getting a C1 and maybe only getting one set of Matrices, your numbers might be comparable, but I did want to at least let you know what I'm working with. Well, hopefully this helped you decide if you want to row or skip Claudia. If you like this, let me know down in the comments and I can try to make more of these in the future. But other than that, talk with you guys later.